My name's Peter. I'm heading up developer relations, and this is Jess.
Hello, I'm doing community and events.
Right. And so we're both here to sort of answer your questions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can walk you through a couple of slides. And actually, let me share my full screen. And then I'll show you a little demo of how our stuff works. And then we can go from there. So first, just in case you're coming from one of the links I sent out, in Twitter or something, and you haven't had a chance to join the Discord for the actual hackathon, it's in CoinList Discord, which should be in the CoinList hackathon link, and it's hashtag IDO hackathon right here. So we created a channel in our Discord as well, in case you had NEAR specific questions, just to make it easy for you. It's also hashtag IDO hackathon, and you can find our Discord by going to near.chat. You'll get dropped right in there into the welcome, and you can find all of our channels that way. So just quick sort of orientation there if you have deeper engineering questions or things like that that you want answers for. So what is NEAR? Well, to answer that question, we want to start with what's the problem with centralization? So most people watching are actually probably really familiar with this problem. But I wanted to, just in case someone hasn't been exposed to this idea, give a little bit of overview of the why behind this entire movement. I think it's kind of easy to forget when you get really caught up in the weeds here. And this is a really good example, which is the concept of a walled garden. When you have centralization, you're able to build these ecosystems that are really hard to traverse. So right here we have Lyft. By the way, is this in the way? Is my video in the way, or can you see this all right?
Yeah, we can see everything.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. So you have Lyft and Uber as a good example of two silos. And the example here is someone on Uber, maybe they have 1,000 rides, 5,000. These people have been working on these platforms now for years, and they have a great reputation. And then something happens at Uber that they morally disagree with, or perhaps, something that has happened in the past is they change a policy on how they treat their drivers, and it affects this driver negatively. So they decide to move to Lyft. But they don't have that background. They don't have the ratings where they're able to bring it with them. They're able to use all of this equity they've built up, being a good driver there. And if they have one driver in the first 10, that dilutes, that dilutes their rating by quite a lot, and it's harder for them to get rides. It actually directly affects them. So what is an alternative to this is decentralization, which is an inversion of the model, where data itself is owned by the user on the platform, and then the services are provided with access to these data on either of the platforms, right? So theoretically, you could build open Uber, open Lyft, or open Flywheel, any number of these competitors that were able to compete previously, and they can then compete on features rather than competing on anti-patterns trying to lock in their ecosystem. So that brings us to what we're doing in order to solve this problem, right? And this is the blockchain part, right? But I wanted to frame this because we're really, really interested in this open prairie concept, and that's what we're keeping in mind while we're building out what we are is a scalable sharded blockchain. So now we're getting into the sort of jargon of blockchain that I'm sure a lot of you have heard. We're proof of stake, we're sharded, and we have a new model of consensus that's built around something like thresholded proof of stake. So what all that means is basically this last line, we're trying really, really hard to be developer and user friendly. So we believe transactions should be fast. Liveness should be really good. You should have a high TPS, right? Transactions per second, if you guys have heard that before. But that's actually not enough, right? We want to make it so that it's not only easy to build on the platform, but like as easy as maybe spinning up an AWS Lambda or on any one of these serverless products that are out there, or as easy as spinning up a microservice as you would in Web 2.0, right? So we use something that's basically, it's assembly script is TypeScript that compiles to WebAssembly. We created an in-browser IDE, which I can give you a demonstration of. And then pretty much everything else, we've targeted web development as our primary, like our primary first vector. Now, so this isn't on the slide, but now you can write your contracts in Rust because we have a runtime that also compiles to WebAssembly. But the entire focus of this is that from the protocol layer up, we're developer and we're user friendly. So yeah, right now I'm gonna come back to this IDE, but I want to give a quick demonstration of sort of what you can do inside of the IDE and what our contracts actually look like. So I'll do a really simple one, which is just an example of wallet integration. So I click create, it'll take a second right now to load. And this whole thing runs in the browser. Oh, quick plug, yeah, we've got a beta program. So if you're starting a company based on this hackathon, you should apply. Yeah, so this whole thing might look familiar to you because it's sort of designed like VS Code. And we have this project is scaffolded on the fly. So when I click create, a new project is actually created under this unique ID. I'll tour the project in just 1 second, but when I click run, the point is that in 2 clicks, I actually have now just deployed a smart contract to our testnet. And so if I want to go and sign in, so I'll just use, I got this account already loaded potato. I authorize this account, I'm taken back. This is very reminiscent of Web 2.0. And the reason this is possible is because, you know, it's not just important to have high performance and make sure that proof of stake is working how it should theoretically work and like, you know, having good fast transaction times. It's really important to just have kind of human readable, human experienceable things. So this is a simple app that if I click here to find out, no one said hi because I just deployed this contract. If I say hi, it writes to the blockchain, I click, and it'll say, I just said hi, right? So this is Hello World, but it's with accounts, so you can see associated data. So yeah, just to prove that this is actually deployed, if you guys want to, you can go play with this right now. If I can find the chat here. Let me go to more. Sorry, it got hidden in it. Here we go. So this is the actual app that I just wrote, right? So if I click it from here, I'm still logged in. If I click it, here, let's see it. Let's see if anyone else, oh, it's still me. All right, that's fine. Maybe I'll come back and someone else will click it. So yeah, that's the studio. I'm actually not gonna go into a deep dive just yet. I wanna cover a couple more things. And then I'll come back to that. Okay, so we're also user-friendly. So once a developer actually builds something, it's important for them to be able to send a link to their mom or their grandma or their girlfriend or their friend who maybe isn't technical. We have this really strong belief that blockchain is not going to reach full level of adoption as, you know, something like Web 2.0 unless you have experiences that are reminiscent of Web 2.0 to people. And honestly, I hope one day they'll actually be better because you'll be able to create new experiences that were not possible. You know, CryptoKitties is one example of, you know, an experience you couldn't have made in Web 2.0, actually owning digital assets. And as silly as the use case might be to some people, I actually think it's extremely powerful to see that this is something that, like, you know, has legs behind it. You know, even something as simple as NFTs, non-fungible tokens, right? So what we've done for user-friendly stuff is that wallet that I showed you. It's entirely web-based. So, you know, we're not using a browser plugin like MetaMask. Account creation, you don't need to go through like a 12 phrase seed phrase. There's no hidden transaction fees. Everything is extremely transparent on the developer side. Developers can create accounts for their users, and the user doesn't even have to know what they're using is running on blockchain, which is what I think technology is kind of at the heart should be, right? A sufficiently advanced technology should appear to be as magic, is a quote I've heard before. So yeah, that's the wallet. I already showed you guys that, so I won't demo that again. Whoops. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about some ideas that would be interesting to pursue in this hackathon if people are just looking for ideas. So I'll go through these ideas and then I'll go back and actually look at some of the code so you guys can get a feel for, you know, how developing something like this would actually go. So from a real world perspective, talking to entrepreneurs, there are 3 broad categories of blockchain use cases right now, and specifically blockchain native use cases. There are a lot of applications that are, okay, it's like Web 2.0, but mapped to blockchain, right? You know, like Uber, but on blockchain. I actually haven't ran into that one specifically, but I'm sure it's out there. Yeah, it's out there. You know, but these really are the categories that you can drill into, which is you have something that's actually existing and revenue producing, right? So these are your DEXs, these are like your crypto kitties. These are people running big businesses that already are, you know, at the stage of like product market fit, but they're trying to grow their business. There are people who are developing new blockchain use cases, and I say in development, just meaning that they're actually have something concrete that they're working on, but it's not quite finished. So one example is the company that's doing the IoT hubs, actually building physical hubs that runs on blockchain. So they can do low energy, like they can create low energy decentralized networks. That's in development, but it's not quite released. It doesn't quite have revenue, doesn't quite have product market fit. And my favorite category is this like utopian ideal, right, epic but risky blockchain use cases. These are the people who are trying to create DAO generators. These are things like trying to like create new forms of governance that you know, maybe they haven't figured out a way to like turn it into a business. But when they do, they're going to be really, really impactful in the world. So yeah, I'm not going to actually go through these slides because they're like pretty boring. It's just like going into what each of these categories are. I think it'd be much more interesting if I use this time to, you know, demonstrate specifically like how to actually like build something on NEAR and how quickly you can do that if you're interested in doing it. So I'll close out these slides. I won't close them because I have one last slide once I'm done with the demo. But let's see here. Yeah, so let's go back to the studio and actually look at what's going on here, right? So when I clicked new and I clicked the example of a NEAR wallet integration, right? And I clicked create. I won't create it again because this one's already deployed, so it'll be something to play with. All this stuff was generated on the fly from templates that we have behind the scenes. So they're really in this folder for our intents and purposes, there are three important files where the magic happens. And the first is main.ts. Main.ts, as you can see, so this application that's running over here, and no one else went on there, is the entire smart contract, right? So the quote unquote address that it's deployed against is actually an account that is associated in here, right? So for the online IDE studio, that's found in config.js. It's near hello devnet. So all of the online contracts that we deploy are just, they're associated with this specific address, right? That address is just like this one that I showed you earlier. There's no real difference between the accounts that I have, and you can see I have a few potato related accounts. You know, there's no real difference between this account and the account that I actually deploy a contract against. And that's really important because it's this thing I was saying earlier, it's human readable, right? So if I know the contract name, if someone goes and says, well, I have a contract deployed against, you know, loaded potato, right? And that's the contract's name, then I can go and call that contract permissionlessly, and I'll be able to get the data that it's providing, right? So here, there's nothing really that exciting going on except for, you know, this hello world that demonstrates, you know, you can get the user context. That sender is actually going and getting the person who's logged in, and then it's storing that sender, and then later it's going in, and this is a getter who said hi. It's going and getting it from storage, right? Nothing really exciting. One minor thing is I should add is you can import models as well. This is just a fun side note. So if I wanted to create a class and it's called greeter, for instance, and then you know, it's just message, right? Oh, oops, message is a type, oh my gosh, type string, there we go. Then what I can do is export this, first of all, save it, and then I can actually import it here. Import greeter from, and then this is going to be ./model.near. What this does is actually pulls in the model, and then I can use, like, you know, I can go, if I wanted to create a new greeter, instance and then get greeter.message right down here. And then, you know, append it to whatever I want to over here. Now, how do I actually get this in the front end, right? So like these functions, this, like I said, this is the whole entire contract. Let me finish touring before I start modifying stuff and then, like, you know, probably running into bugs. is these exported functions, say hi and who said hi, get registered inside of our front end just with our library, right? So this won't be necessary at mainnet, but right now the way that it works is, so the contract itself is loaded from our config, right? So this is a config.js file I said. And we have documentation on all of this, right? You don't have to take notes. And also we have templates, which are easier than documentation anyways. So I'd recommend using the templates. I'll show you that as well. But yeah, so main.js, right? A lot of stuff is going on over here. Don't worry too much about this except for 2 lines in here, which are interesting. One is grabbing the wallet account in 1 line, right? And then 2 is actually registering these contract calls as a view and a change method, right? So fundamentally, you have, as soon as you write your contract, the API is sort of, you can think of it as like ethereal, funny choice of words, but it's floating in the background. You register them with this front-end library, and then that allows you to bind them in ways that you might be familiar with. You can use whatever you want, any front-end library. Like here, this is just raw HTML. There's no React, there's no Vue, it's just raw HTML, where in main.js, we're just getting element by ID, refresh button, right? We're adding an event listener, and we're calling these like really basic functions that then call the actual contract, which is right here, right? So contract who said hi, then, if you guys are familiar with promises, you know, or how this works, then it's appended to this element who, right? And all of this stuff, just to show you there's nothing fancy going on. It's like, say hi, here, let me see where this is appended, who. Oh, it's not highlighting for me. There it is, okay. So question mark, right? This is just text. It's getting this element by ID and then changing out the inner HTML with the string from the contract, right? That's what context.sender is actually getting. So that this all comes together with, you know, when I click hi and then I click this immediately afterwards, it's actually writing my username to storage from the wallet that I logged in with. And then if I click it, it'll do it elsewhere. And let me actually try one other thing here. Wait, let me go into a different session, and then sign in with a different account. You know what? Let me try to create an account. So I actually I broke this, so this might be broken at this time. But by the time test account's taken, test.this. By the time that I send this link to you guys, you'll be able to create an account. Hey, it's working. Okay, excellent. It might have been a caching issue. That makes me really happy. Okay, so test.this, right? So if I go in this new session and I go to this app, oops, sorry, I'm having trouble copying and pasting this. Basic things. Here we go. Oh, whoops, it carried my session over. There we go. There we go. So if I sign in with test.this, okay, and I click say hi, and I'm not going to find out who is last, right? So I click say hi, then I go over to this page. Remember, this is like the other account that I'm logged into. Test.this was logged in, right? So this is actually writing. So if I click hi and then loaded potato, and then I go to test.this, loaded potato, right? A bit contrived of an example, but I'm just trying to prove this is actually live, not me just pulling your leg or something. So yeah, I won't demo the wallet. I'll send you guys a list of links. That'll be much easier than me walking through every single piece. I think now would be a really good time to show you really quickly just how this code generation works. Is this okay? Can you guys read what I'm doing here in terminal?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just want to show you the NEAR shell, and then I'm going to pass it over to everyone in the chat for questions, right? So I'm in a CD to my sandbox. I have a little sandbox folder with a bunch of just trash projects here. So the way this works is you go npm install dash g near dash shell. Just like any other shell that you might be familiar with. Clear. Okay, right. I might be something with my config here. npm i-g near shell. I think Sandbox has a config file in it. Oh no, no such file or directory. All right, I'll debug this later, and I'll just demo a local version in case this is. Yeah, as you can see, like we move really, really fast. So sometimes things are not working like hour by hour, but that's because we're making a lot of progress. Okay, so I'll just do a new project. So right now, this is what I'm calling a new project, and I'm generating a new project in a new directory. And yeah, so it's looking for my config, but it can't find it. So it's going to use the default configuration, right? And then it's copying it from like blank project in my in my actual shell. So if I cd into new project and I open this up, it's going to look really, really familiar to the thing that was generated inside of the online studio, right? So like, again, we have main.ts, model.ts, and look, it's the same like hello world, except with a little bit of a different thing. This actually uses that class that I was talking about. And then it's instantiated inside of main.js, where configuration is pulled in from a file. And then it's actually like, these 3 lines that I told you earlier, right? So there's near gets defined. It's actually like creating, loading in config, and then it's grabbing the wallet ID, getting the account ID, and then actually like loading the contract. And it's the who said hi, say hi, right? So one quick note is if you do start developing in the IDE, you can just click download, and then this project will run locally just as it did in IDE. And I wouldn't recommend this. You can upload the project back to the IDE if you want to share it. I think it's easier to just use Git, honestly, for sharing projects. And then one last piece is just test.js, the way these are tested. So one convenience is that because these things are loaded, right, so that they're on contract, right, all of your functions, the way that you call them are say hi or contract.whosaidhi, right, they're just called on the contract. Because of that, then they're completely available in any front-end library that you want. So a really nice benefit is you can write tests as if you're just testing a front end, right? So as you can see over here, like if I want to get hello message, I can just say the result is contract.whosaidhi, and all this is checking is if it's actually getting called, right? If it's not called, it'll be undefined, but to be null is actually going to check that there's something happening there. And you can add whatever you want. You can add all sorts of tests. I mean, it's sort of like tests are built into the Bedrock as well. So let's see. And then and the way this new project works, you just do npm install, right? And then what you do is you would create an account and then update the config.js. So it's near hello devnet, right? Just like the studio. But that's not going to work because we don't actually have access to that account locally. So then I would go near login, right? And then what happens is I get this URL that I can just take, and I can take it to the browser. I'll use this account because this was working. Yep. And then I just authorize it just like as if it were deployed, right? So now it's authorized. It's good to go. And then I'm using account test.this. Right, now I go test.this. All right, and we just loaded this master account with a new public key. So the cool thing is that, like, you don't have to worry about what this public key is. That's all abstracted away. All you have to remember is like whatever username that you want to be your master account. So so this is my master account. Now I can do this. Now I can create as many accounts as I want. So I'm gonna say hello contract account, and just in case someone else made a hello contract out there, and I'm going to go -- master account equals test.this. Now this might seem really confusing, and that's because it's this thing that I sort of said earlier, which is that accounts are accounts are accounts, right? It's that your wallet account is no different than this devnet account that we're using over here, right, near hello devnet, which is no different than the account that I just logged in with into the shell, right? That's very much on purpose. That's because accounts are really just private keys and public keys at the end of the day. And you don't really have to worry about anything more than that. The private key, wherever you're creating an account, is generated where it's created, and then you're sharing a public key so you can access that, right? So you're like deploying it against testnet. Public key is sort of like the API key that other things can use to access it. But you don't need to know what the public key is or really worry about it, except for a few small spaces, like when you're setting this up, right? Like for a generated link, like the wallet needs to know the public key. Again, all you need to know is whatever the account ID is. So hello contract account, let's create this account. And we got it. So now we've got hello contract account. Now what we can do is take this, change the name from near hello devnet, and then deploy to devnet, or to the testnet right here, right? So, so I got to build first. Hopefully I didn't change anything yet. Okay, cool. So yeah, all this stuff is just like, it's building, it's compiling it into WASM basically, and then near deploy. I don't think I need to set the custom URL for this. I can just hit near deploy, and there we go. So yeah, don't worry about the deprecated warning. That's just need to update one of the versions here, but it's not going to break anything. Now what we just saw is starting deployment. It loaded my master account, right? It actually used loaded potato because I had a saved key somewhere else, but don't worry about that. What the important thing is, it actually deployed it against hello contract account, right? Because I set it in this config, and the only reason that was possible was because I created the account elsewhere. So if we go and actually like run this code now, npm start, then I can call this contract, and it'll actually call the data against, yeah, so it's deploying it again. It'll actually call the data from testnet. So this is actually now like as good as live. This is a live thing, but it's running locally, right? So again, it's the same thing that we just saw in Studio, but now this is running locally, like in just like pretty easily. And so if I click to find out, nobody, right? I say hi, but I'm logged in with loaded potato. Loaded potato is the last person to say hi. Okay, so you know, like again, some of the account details are really confusing. We have a whole document that explains why that is and why it's a good idea to do that. But that basically concludes the demo. You know, this is like the simple Hello World demo. Everything else I can link to you so that, you know, it's much easier to kind of just go through example by example rather than me explaining in great detail of like, if you're curious about what's going on behind the scenes. Here's some links. So if you want to show up in our Discord and ask us specific questions, I'm pretty much always online. It's near.chat. The studio, really easy to remember, near.dev. That'll take you to the studio is just in. Of course, our website, nearprotocol.com. Nothing interesting there. Docs.nearprotocol.com. Lots of interesting stuff. And I can show you that really quickly. This is where you can find answers to your questions. And I even created this hackathon startup guide so that if you want to do anything crazy, or if you have like these common, it's basically FAQ that have showed up in previous hackathons, they're addressed here, right? Like here are creative ways to store things. It's not just storage. We also have persistent collections, lots of syntactic sugar and helpers and things like that. And if you do have questions and more than one person asks them, you'll see this hackathon startup guide getting updated right away. So that's a good place to look if you're participating in the hackathon, which I'm guessing if you're listening, you probably are. And then of course, if you want a deeper dive, there's the quick start, which will cover the IDE, which I already did. And then how to do local development, which is what I also covered. So yeah, most of this stuff is going to seem really, really reminiscent of what I've been saying. It's all the same thing. Good news is you don't have to remember it. I wrote it all down. So that's it for the presentation. Thanks really much Thanks very much for listening. And then I'll leave these links up and I'll answer any questions anyone might have in the chat. I'll take a look. Oh, and Jess can answer questions too.
Beautiful work. All right, so everybody who's listening, feel free to use the chat for some Q&A here. We'll leave it open for a little bit.
Yeah. Gavin, do you have any questions after that?
Yeah, actually, what are some apps that you want to see people, because you know, one of the best parts of NEAR is this the familiarity with the language and the environment, right? It kind of fits into what you've seen. And then the quick iteration time, right? There's a nice way to do jazz between, what you're writing and what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So it meets the metaphors. So based on kind of those, like what would you want to see people building on this, right? We've got a community of people starting to dive into things. And so based on some of these things, what would you like to see people build?
That's a great question. Let me show you, someone built this in a previous hackathon, and I would not have thought of this, but it always is a good place for me to sort of ground the creative juices. It's like, this is a blockchain native application called Create Pinky Promise. It was built on NEAR in a previous hackathon. I thought, like, these guys made this really slick app. And it's really intuitive. You know what this is, right? It's a contract between two people, and it's pinky promise, right? So it's like Gavin and Peter might have something we want to promise each other, and you can actually write it to the blockchain, right? Like, I promise to buy you coffee one time or something, like, right?
All right.
So I think this is something that I wouldn't have thought up myself, but I was just so thrilled when someone thought up like a pinky promise application. So this is a great place to start, is like what you can do in a limited amount of time, right? This was a weekend hackathon. You have even more time on this hackathon. Something like this, where like, if you imagine any kind of contract, like social contracts, particularly, I find very interesting. Those can get mapped into a blockchain use case.
And just to add on some of the stuff I'm really interested in, my background has been in economics and social systems. So the stuff I'm really interested in is things like commons coordination. So like, can you create, so DAOs are quite interesting in this regard. Any sort of decentralized funding mechanism. Basically like applications, and it's weird to even call them applications, but I guess they are, that are helping like a large group of people coordinate to either like protect something or fund something or get something done that normally they wouldn't have necessarily been able to do. There's a whole host of those in sort of like resource management and even like governing kind of open source projects and stuff like that. I would really love to see more of that.
Nice. It's also, I noticed the contract went one way, and it was me buying you coffee. It's very, very clever.
Well, whoops, that. Well, I'll flip it around. Yeah. Well, I owe you I pinky promise to buy you a coffee then later. There's another category that I'm interested in seeing, which is this one's a little bit more dry, but like things that are like it's sort of like aggregated asset classes. Like, for instance, I read this paper on how you could actually create a civic coin. So like a city could power its infrastructure by having a local cryptocurrency that you can only buy, like for instance, BART, rather than tapping a BART card, we could actually power that as a civic coin. And then rather than just
paying for a ride on a train, you could go into like pay your parking ticket or things like that, because you'd have to buy it with real dollars and it's stabilized against the actual property value of the city.
So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Well, one of the things I'm curious to see if people build games, right? Because just because like it's an area that now that we have the speed of these and the development environment's friendly enough, we can get into these kind of more dynamic applications. So that's one of the areas I'm hoping to see a little bit of push on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's like gaming is a great backdoor into people using a thing, right? It's just it's a nice on-ramp because you're not even thinking about what it is. You're just playing.
I think also there's a really interesting way in which once you, like, so we've all agreed that like games are virtual or made up or something, but then what happens when the things that you own in a game, the things that you build are actually real in some way? Like it kind of starts to blur the line between game and not game. And that's really interesting. Like you could imagine someone who like a lot of their assets are in game, and that actually is meaningful because their property rights are protected in a way that it isn't in a conventional game that is largely run by a company where the assets are just kind of tracked in a database on a server somewhere.
Yeah.
So, Yeah.
All right. Hey, crowd or attendees, anybody got any questions? We've got two experts on the line from a brand new protocol that the world doesn't know much about yet, but is coming to know. And it is highly capable. So,
and maybe if you guys are not sure what to ask, maybe if you're planning on doing the hackathon, are there things that you would need or like that you're kind of curious about to get your own project started for that?
And Alex and Jess, if you guys are, or sorry, Peter, if you guys are okay throwing maybe some contact information in for people,
Sure.
just so they can reach out if they have questions, things like that.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm gonna put my email in the chat itself, but it's really easy to remember. It's Peter at NEAR Protocol. Jess
Not
is
Alex.
Jess at NEAR Protocol. Yeah, well, there's a lot of Alexes in NEAR Protocol, so you throw a dart, you might be right. You can also email Alex at NEAR Protocol. You'll get an answer.
And Alex, only one of them.
Yeah, on one of the Alexes, I promise will answer you if you email that out there. And then
we'll all have access to that email.
we should, Alex, it should go to all of us. The other one, of course, is near.chat. This is where, like, we're really responsive via email. We're extremely responsive in the chat if you have like specific questions. And I'm actually watching the IDEO chat as well. I want to make sure anybody who's like got concerns or wants to build something cool has the support they need. It's something I'm like personally very passionate about. So yeah, like don't be worried about bothering me or whatever. Like I have a very big inbox that I get through every single day. So shoot over your questions. Yeah.
I have kind of one question in parting.
Sure.
Yeah, Peter, are those parrots on your shirt? Or what?
They're berries. They're
okay.
Oh God.
Pattern.
Oh yeah, they're bananas.
Pattern shirts are something that I see all the time over here at IDEO. So I see them and I have to ask.
This is one of my favorite shirts. Yeah, it's I like it. It's a little bananas. Cool.
It is a little bananas. All right, people. Well, if there's nothing else coming in, then I think we should wrap it up here.
Great, sounds good to me. Yeah, and once again, just in case someone's watching on YouTube, this is the end of the video. This still applies to you. Email us and jump in near.chat or go in the IDEO Hackathon chat, and we're all on Discord, so you can find us pretty easily. So
yeah. All right, Jess, Peter, thanks a ton, you guys, for doing this.
Thanks, Gavin.
Everybody, thanks for showing up, and happy hacking.
All right, take it easy.
Adios.
Bye. Bye.